Well, hello, Manchester, Hooksett, and Auburn. Here we are, the first show of the progress report for the month of May, and it's entered with quite an astounding situation, hasn't it? The temperature hitting more than 90 degrees here in Manchester. Seemed like January was going to last for 6 months. It only lasted for 3 months, and here we are. And since this is the first Wednesday of the month, I am expecting my good friend Lou D'Alessandro to walk in here at any minute and join us, but he's not here right now, which is fine. Lou marches to his own drummer sometime, but he's always a contributor, always helping out. And so we are going to go right ahead with the program today. And as always, we hope you'll participate and call in at 640-3091. And I'm very pleased to have back for, I think, the second time in the progress report, but the first time as an announced candidate for political office, Gray Chenoweth, also known as Graham Chenoweth. And he's making his first foray into electoral politics by running to succeed Chris Pappas as the executive counselor for District 4, which includes Manchester and how many other towns?
It's 19 towns.
19 towns. Man, that's a lot of towns. And so we're very pleased to have Gray with us here. He has an interesting primary contest with Garth Corvo, who's been a guest on this show. And we have, I think, two very fine candidates. But it's really a pleasure to welcome Gray to us because he has, I think, a rather amazing career in Manchester. To me, he represents everything we want to say about Manchester. He's young, which I can no longer claim. He's young. He's been in the tech business. He's made a success for himself in many different areas of that business. And he's got a young family, and he's intending to live in Manchester. And now he wants to be part of our political environment by being our executive counselor. Gray, thanks for coming on and joining me here, and I hope Lou soon.
Yeah, no, well, Bob, thank you very much for for having me on the show. It's always fun to come and connect with people in their living rooms and talk to them, or talk with folks and talk with you about, why, what's going on in the community, what issues people care about. And that's why I echo your comment about I'd love for people to call in with questions.
I hope they do.
I was on with Hoppy last week, and someone called in about a community project, which is great to have.
Yeah.
And so it's good to be here and excited to be back. It was a great experience the first time. I'm sure it'll be fun this time as well.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned Hoppy because you know why I'm going with this. He and a very fine citizen of Manchester, Alderman Bill Cashin, just had a lawsuit that was filed against them by former mayor and now running for executive council on the Republic. I don't think he has a primary opponent, does he, Ted Diatzis?
I think he might have a woman named Jane Cormier running as a Republican.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he does. Yep.
Oh, my goodness. I remember her. She was in the New Hampshire House once upon a time. Very extreme person, folks. I have to tell you that. But in any event, it's interesting that Ted Gatsison, I think one of the most ill-advised decisions he's ever made, decided to sue Bill Cashin, who's a legend in this city, and deservedly so. His portrait's in the aldermanic chambers in the City Hall. And I think he may be the only portrait in City Hall. He sued Bill Cashin and John Hopwood, who has been referred to here as Hoppy, for defamation for saying that he had covered up the allegations of a rape at West High School, which we now know were not allegations. They were true. There's been somebody convicted of that. And, the idea that somebody with the public status of Ted Gatsas could win a defamation suit just seems to me bizarre. But I get distracted on that. But in any event, whoever wins this primary, I think in all probability be running against Ted Gatsas. I don't think Jane Cormier is going to be a formidable opponent to him. But, Garth, I want to back up and have you
Garth,
tell us.
I'll go by Gray for most of it.
Okay, Gray. Gray is Garth.
Yeah, no, we're both G's.
Okay.
Strong names.
And I would like to have you tell us a little bit about your career, which has been a really extremely interesting and I think very successful career in one of the things we like to boast about in Manchester, and that's the growth of our high-tech industry. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I'd love to, but I think for a little bit of perspective, I don't know if you want to let me start a little bit earlier about why I'm kind of thinking about getting into the race.
Well, you can go there if you want to.
Yeah, because I think there's really two reasons I'm running, right? The first one, as you mentioned, is that I think my business career first at Dine. First at Sheehan, Finney, Bass and Green as a corporate attorney, then at Dine, helping them scale from 25 people to 450, and helping support all the stuff that led to that acquisition by Oracle. That was a thrilling ride and very exciting, and I learned a lot.
What did you do there, actually?
So I showed up as a lawyer. So we were 15 people, and I was helping Jeremy Hitchcock, who I had met through the Leadership Manchester program that's run by the Chamber of Commerce. We met, and he hired me for a few things here and there. And then I started helping out more, and then he told me one time, he said, "Grace, so I don't. This might be too personal, but how much do you make?" And so I shared with him how much he made, and he realized that he was starting to pay more to the law firm to have me work than I was making. So he then said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to save money, but I want to bring you on full time."
Wow.
And so I joined, but I helped with a lot of different things. I did when I first showed up. I was doing a lot of the legal stuff with contracts and everything like that, but then. As we grew, I took on more and more responsibilities. So I helped out with finance, with HR, with strategy and planning, operations. I eventually, we helped raise the first funding we got. I then went and kind of capped out a 10-year career there, running the engineering group at Dine, and it was really a fabulous experience and taught me a lot. About a bunch of different things. So taught me about how to build a workplace culture, right, which was incredibly important for Dine's scale and success. And also, taught me a lot about how to hire executives, how to hire and build a good leadership team.
When I think of people working in tech, I think they must write a lot of code. Did you ever write code yourself?
Well, so I went to high school for 2 years in Belmont. And as part of that, Mr. Fournier, my IT teacher, talked to me. I learned a little bit. I became Microsoft certified. And then actually I remember my first time on the internet was in the early 90s, kind of like AOL time when you got the CDs and that kind of thing. But I went to UC Berkeley via the internet and downloaded an astronomy picture of the stars, which had a big impact on me that you can go someplace that far away. Because growing up in Canterbury, the big city, Manchester's the big city, and, Boston or California is just kind of too far away to understand. So so I was super excited about that chance and did a little bit of code. And then when I was in college, I did a little bit of website development. So I had to know a little bit, but then I was a lawyer.
You do have some tech skills, actually.
Well, so I always enjoyed tech, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what made me successful at Dine, is I loved the technology, and that's part of, I think, what has made me successful in a lot of parts of my career is I just love to learn, right? I love to try new things. I love to work hard, and for me that it's been exciting to move, to learn the law. Been exciting to move from that to learn technology. The way that organizations work, and now it's exciting for me to be working with Dean Kamen down in the Mill Yard.
That is very, very exciting. We had on the program a couple of weeks ago Mike DeSalle.
He's a fabulous leader,
a wonderful guy, and an amazing,
great executive,
great executive.
Yep.
And to be dean of the school when he doesn't have the academic PhDs and that thing, but. He's going to be a powerhouse, I think.
Well, he's got a PhD in real world experience.
Yeah,
and I think that's, I think that the skills that you develop in business, whether it's hiring people or whether it's managing a team, working with a team, leading a team, or whether it's driving a good deal.
Yeah.
Right. I think those are all things that are critically important in any circumstance, whether it be in business, in the private sector, whether it be in the in the academic sector, or honestly, that's one of the things that makes me feel like I might be able to do a good job for citizens, is that I think having a business experience like I do, I'll help the state be able to make better decisions on a bunch of different things. But most importantly, driving good business deals that get the best deal we can for the taxpayers when we're signing contracts with the state.
So my recollection, you went from, well, obviously I wasn't aware of this, but I should have been, practicing law at Sheehan Finney.
Yep.
Fine, well-established firm here in Manchester.
Some fantastic stalwarts of the community at that firm.
Great people in that firm, no question about it.
Yep.
To Dine, then to Silvertech. What made you jump over to Army?
Well, so I had a fantastic time at Silvertech, and when I signed up for that, Nick Soga, who's the CEO there, was experiencing some tremendous growth. I forget what it was, but they basically like doubled in size. And he said, hey, listen, you at Dyn, you got to see this experience of really growing a company and the different types of things you need to do to make sure that the company doesn't fall over on itself, right? Because when you have a lot of growth, it's easy to go so fast that you're not taking care of customers, that you're not making sure that the quality that got you to that one level of success, sticks around so you can get to the next level of success.
Was Dyn very different from Silvertech?
Oh, I mean, very different businesses. Silvertech does data work and website development and code development, but they do it for other customers, right? So they don't really do it for themselves. They don't make their own product, right? They support other people, in whether it's a bank or the state of New Hampshire. They do a lot of great work for the state of New Hampshire. They do a lot of great work for a large computer manufacturing company with a critically important part of their sales infrastructure. They did a great work for the for the New Hampshire Historical Association. So they do a lot of work with building websites and digital platforms that really leverage data to deliver value to people that are using that platform.
In Silvertech?
At Silvertech, yeah. So that's what Silvertech does. But it's more, they do custom work for companies, right? So you could think about them as, a high-end, very high-end construction home builder. Right?
So how do they recruit you for Army?
Well, so what happened was, I had a great time with Nick, and we were able to bring on new members to the management team, and really reorganize that, and really, I think it's in a fabulous place. And so, Dyn had sold, and so I was in a position to be able to have a little bit more freedom. I said, hey, Nick, would you mind if I go work on this other passion that I have, which is working with startups? And because it's a very well established business, and they were continuing to scale. And he said, sure. So it was a great parting. We're still very close friends. I'm actually very excited about he's supportive in the campaign, because I think that he could do a lot to help the state rethink the way that it approaches digital service to citizens. One of the things that I always wonder is, why do we wait in line at the DMV? Everywhere else, you book a ticket online, you show up at a particular point, and you can get in to see someone, and we haven't solved that yet at the DMV. And I think that's the kind of question that we need to ask people, is why. And I'm sure that some people will say it costs $1 million to do. But I just bought a piece of software down at my current job at the mill yard, and I was, it's a great, cost $10 a month, Calendly. If you want to try it at home, go out and look at Calendly. And what it does, anyone on earth can schedule an appointment with you, and they can reschedule it if they want to for another time that's open. You can make them 5 minutes or 15 minutes. You can put a 2-minute buffer before and a 5-minute buffer after. You can all this kind of stuff. $10 a month, and I believe that we should be asking questions of state government about. I'm sure that there's lots of people at the DMV who, instead of managing lines, would be open to providing tests, working with more special cases, that kind of thing. But we can use technology to make our lives a lot easier.
It certainly has.
And I think we can do it without spending a lot of money, because what I've done at startups really is leverage technology, use technology wisely to get a lot done with a little bit of money.
Wow. So what made you jump from then Silvertech to Army?
So so basically, I had this conversation with Nick. It started out, I was very focused at the time on raising or building what's the largest investment fund for startups in New Hampshire history, called the Millworks Fund.
Really?
So we raised
I've never even heard of it. It's really amazing.
So you probably have heard of two of the programs that we fund companies out of. One is called TechOut, which you might have heard of before, that's run by the High Technology Council. And another one is called Accelerate NH, which is run by the Alpha Loft. And so we work with those two. We do judging, and we work with those two community groups to pick the best of the companies that go through those and invest. So we invested in 5 companies with the fund from last year, put $600,000 into those 5 companies, and we're very, very excited about the prospects for them. And some of them, actually one of them, Datanomics, just announced that in addition to our $100,000 that we invested, they raised another $900,000 and got $1 million to capitalize their business, and have moved into moved in up from Nashua to Manchester. So
9-1.
So I think it's a great example of why that kind of early momentum and early money into a company can make an impact.
Wow.
And it's very exciting. It's a great company. They do analytics for IoT, for Internet of Things, at industrial scale applications. So when you think about a big factory that has a lot of machines in it, so nowadays those machines can get connected to the internet. And when you connect those machines to the internet, you can get a bunch of data that comes off. How fast this one is working, and this one might have a broken part, and so that you can use that data to make sure that your production line doesn't go down, or that you're making your parts more effectively and efficiently.
Yep.
So it's very exciting, and exactly the kind of company that I'm excited to see in the mill yard and excited to invest and support, because I think that's what we need to figure out in Manchester and New Hampshire is jobs that keep the economy growing and that everyone can have access to. And that was actually one of the great things about Silvertech, was we had this fabulous program and a relationship with New Hampshire NHTI up in Concord. And what the kids would do, or the young professionals would do, is they'd graduate from high school, they'd go for 2 years to NHTI, which is very economical, right, comparatively to a lot of schools, inexpensive. And then after 2 years, we'd take them in the second semester of their second year, and so they only have very little debt at that point. They'd come in, they'd work for us, do an internship, and then we'd start hiring them in the summer after their second year. So they had very limited debt. They could still afford to get a place in Manchester or wherever they came from, and it was really fabulous because we used that, and then we were able to. They had good skills, so we were able to go out and say, "Hey, if you need this application developed, we got a great person. They do a great job. We'd had a lot of great mentoring." And then they would keep on their efforts by going to UNH Manchester at night.
Yeah.
So it was just a fabulous, and I think an example of how. Great example of how we work with.
We're going to take a quick break here.
Okay, great.
We usually do that, and we got. I can see you're fired up.
Oh well, I'm excited about it.
Well, that shows, and that's very nice. But we will take a quick break. We don't have Lou D'Alessandro here. I don't know. He may be held up in the Senate. They were in session today too. Hope he'll show up. But if he doesn't, we've got a terrific guest tonight, and I hope some of you may choose to participate by calling us at 640-3091, because we'll be right back, and we will transition from Gray's obvious enthusiasm for the jobs he's had about developing tech industry and the people to bring here to do the tech, to his current intention to have a political career starting this year. We'll be right back. Hey, this is the Progress Report. It's Wednesday, May 2nd, and a beautiful Wednesday in Manchester. And we have a wonderful guest with us today, and that's Gray Chenoweth, whose father I remember fondly and well, and was a big influence, as fathers in the best sense can be, with Gray, who bears his name, although he never used the name Gray. It was always Graham, right?
It was, yeah.
And but in any event, a fine lawyer, and Gray became a lawyer, but he's moved on to hold exciting positions in the high-tech industry, and he's talked about some of those. And most recently, he's moved over to the most, I think, exciting thing to happen in Manchester, and I don't know when, maybe since the MSK decided to use water power to make cotton, I don't know, and gingham. The Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute that Dean Kamen has brought to us, he has the help of excellent people like Mike DeSalle we had on this program a while ago, and Gray Chenoweth, who's what'd you say your title was there?
CMO.
CMO. And that thing has just got the potential. It's just enormous for this city, and we couldn't be more excited about it. We can't be more excited that somebody of the quality of Gray is helping with that. And how's that going?
It's really fantastic. I think since I joined in January of 2017, and so actually, so it was interesting. So I left Silvertech and working with Nick with this intention to work on this startup fund, which we were able to do. We got 40 people. We got $1.8 million, biggest fund in New Hampshire history.
Where do you get that money from?
So 40 different investors, each investing, and then we also got a match from the Business Finance Authority.
Uh-huh.
So that grossed it up, and that made it really, I think, you can see how you can leverage that. So the BFA, I think put in $400,000. We put in $200,000. But then you look at, the $100,000 we put into Datanomics turned into $1 million round. So people are able to leverage that up, and all that money is going into a company right here in Manchester, which is great. So,
what do you think the biggest challenges are for Army to move forward and achieve what it wants to?
I think that we're thrilled about all the success that we've had so far. We were able to launch last summer, had a great event. People in from all over the country coming to Manchester, New Hampshire to talk about regenerative engineering, regenerative manufacturing. And we had a great event in January. I couldn't believe it, but if you remember that, hard to remember on this 80-degree day, but in January, early January, there's a bomb cyclone. We got 2 feet of snow.
Yeah, I do remember.
And even though we got 2 feet of snow, we had 250 people come from around the country
really?
to talk about 3 different things. They talked about standards, right? So how are we going to build the standards for this industry and regulate it to make sure that when we're producing a tissue or an organ that it's, it's make sure that it's effective and safe for people. The second, we talked about direct government investment. So where's the government investing? Most of this money is coming from a desire to develop therapies that will help wounded warfighters. So, if a veteran has a big burn or loses a part of their arm or that type of thing, we want to be able to, what we owe those men and women, without question, is something that'll put them back together again from a physical perspective. So we want to return form and function to the warfighter. That is at the core of the mission of Army.
The thing that seems to me most daunting for you is, can you get the people you need to come here to do what needs to be done to make this thing work?
Well, I think that, some people have said the New Hampshire advantage, is taxes or this or that or the other thing. I think the New Hampshire advantage has always been our people. That's something I firmly believe, and I think that in order to succeed over the next 100 years in ways that we've had success in the past 100, it's really about recruiting and retaining a workforce that's really
that
globally
seems to be what
competitive.
we hear all the time in Concord. There's a lot of this phony baloney about high energy prices, but I think the number one thing is our workforce development and affordable housing for workforce. Those kind of barriers are the big ones, I think.
It's part of what I think is I love New Hampshire's. It's good to have a low tax environment for businesses so they can grow. But what really drives companies today is their talent, is their workforce.
Yeah.
And I think that everything that we can do. That's why when I first showed up. So I showed up back in Manchester after law school, and I didn't have a single friend in Manchester when I showed up in May of 2004. And the reason I didn't have a single friend in Manchester is not because I'm not a friendly guy. I think I'm a friendly guy.
Yeah.
It's because all my friends from high school left. Mm-hmm. So none of them were here. And so I very quickly helped start something called the Manchester Young Professionals Network.
You started that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you got to meet friends somehow.
Yeah.
So the way that my dad did it was you just get involved in the community. So that's what I did. And so I founded NYPM with a bunch of other great folks. And now there's, I think, 13 or something like that, these young professional organizations around the state that are dedicated to recruiting and retaining the next generation of New Hampshire workers. And then after that, I helped found something called Stay Work Play, which is a statewide organization.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Helps with that same issue. And it's always something that I've been very passionate about because of my personal experience, and also because, as someone that ran a business, we needed to hire smart people. And if, the way that I always describe that is, just imagine a situation in which, every year New Hampshire would buy, we'd buy plows, and we'd fill them up with gas, and we'd hire the driver, and we'd put salt on them, and we'd get those ready. And then whenever it snowed, we'd send them down to Massachusetts to plow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what we do with our talent. We lose so much of our talent to companies in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe, this is the reason I came back, I always said it's like a pride deficit disorder. I don't know what is wrong with New Hampshire. We should be so proud of what we have here. And we should know that, just like me, young people that start careers here can have fabulous success. And that's what I wanted to prove, was that, you can come back here, you can have great success, you can build companies like Dine. And the more stories we have of that, that's why I want to help all these other companies start. Because the more stories we have about people being successful here as young professionals, the more likely it's going to be that we're going to be able to keep people here to grow those businesses.
And there's synergies. The more people come, the more people are going to want to come.
That's right. And so I think it's been a great success. Stairwork Play has been fantastic. And, and I think another great issue is now people know about it as an issue. When I first showed up, I remember the reason that we started MYPN not as part of the Manchester Chamber is because we talked to them and they said, that's not a big deal, right? Not a big issue. And we said, no, to all of us it was personal, right? It was personal because none of our friends had moved back either. So we said, no, it is. We should work on this. Mm-hmm. And and that's a great example for me. That's one of the reasons I'm running for office, is because I had a very strong example of my dad. So my dad was, he passed in 2008, but I still think about him every day, and he was a real example for me in terms of his commitment to the community.
Really?
And
but his community was Concord, wasn't it?
It's Canterbury and Concord. So,
Canterbury and Concord.
And Shaker Regional School District.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that he did, so I went up, grew up at Canterbury Public School, Canterbury Elementary, and then went to Belmont High for several years. But the first 2 years of Belmont, or when I got to the end of my first 2 years, the accreditation group came around for New England. And Belmont hadn't built a new school in 50 years. They hadn't upgraded their chemistry facilities or any of their lab facilities. And so the accreditation body said, listen, we think we're going to cancel your accreditation.
Ooh.
Which made my dad frustrated because he wanted me to go to college. And if you don't, the way it works is that if the high school isn't accredited by this organization, then you can't send, the colleges won't accept the diploma. And you got to have a high school diploma to be able to get into college.
Okay.
And so he got nervous about that, and so I ended up going my last 2 years at Bishop Brady in Concord, which is a great school. I had a great time. But right after that, my dad decided, you know what? I am, as a taxpayer and as a community member, I'm pretty frustrated that we don't have the facilities so that these kids can get an education like they deserve and have the opportunity that all the parents want for folks. So what they did is he got involved, got on the school board, and I have a younger brother that happens to be 15 years younger than I am. So when he got to Belmont High, there was a new school. They had figured out the community will to build a new school and get great facilities. And the principal and the administration were winning awards in the state for how good they were doing.
That's really good.
And that was just an example to me of, if you feel like you can have a positive impact on the community, you should. If you can, you should. And I'd like to say, to have the same example for my two boys.
Yeah.
I feel like I can have the business experience that I have. I can help the state make better decisions. And to me, that's that's the example I want to set. And I'd love to have your vote and support in helping go up to Concord and bring some of that experience there. And I think in a lot of ways it's continuing the business experience that Chris Pappas had. Yeah. I mean, I think his experience as a small business owner is great, because when you think about actually why the Executive Council exists, right? Which I've been doing some research into this.
It's a pretty unique institution.
Very unique, and it actually got started. And I knew part of this, but not the other part. The part I knew was that in colonial times, before we were a state, that the king, had kind of talked to some of the colonists about, hey, he didn't want this governor to be thinking of himself as a small king, right? The big king doesn't want a small king, and of course the colonists, they didn't want two kings, right? Like one king was plenty. They didn't even like that. So so what they did is they said, we'll form this little check on the governor on this gubernatorial power thing, and then the second thing that happened is the merchant class, the merchants, the people that were running the stores and things like that, because most of the legislative side of this was agrarian, right? And so the business community said, you know what, we like this idea of people paying attention to be this check on the governor, but we really like the fact that instead of having it act like a legislative branch, we're gonna do it a couple mornings a month so that merchants can get involved and help the state make decisions about money, about how to spend money, because the merchants at the time said, you know what, we don't think that politicians, they may not have a lot of business experience. And so it's probably a good idea to have people that are out there and they know the customs and the way that business gets done, to be able to give it some advice to the state on how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually, a lot of people say the executive council is weird, but I still don't like kings, and I still am concerned about people, political people, making decisions on striking deals, because I think business experience is very helpful for that. So that's,
it really wasn't a particular issue that drove you to seek elective office. It was
there's lots of issues that I care
and,
about. I mean, I'm running.
Tell us about some of them.
Yeah, so I'm running because I think I can help the state make better decisions on keeping politics out of making sure we have good health care for women and families.
Mm-hmm.
I care about a multimodal transportation system and commuter rail as part of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very important for our economic growth.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that we need to think a little differently and be a little bit more, take more calculated risks, be more entrepreneurial when it comes to dealing with the opioid crisis, because it is tearing our community apart.
It certainly is.
And if the definition, I think it was I forget who said this, maybe it was Einstein, said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I think
it may have been Freud, but that's okay.
Freud. Well, someone smarter than I am.
Yes.
But the point of it is that I think we need to take some calculated risks. I think that if we do the same thing with the same resources, we're not going to get there. And then I think, so those are three issues that I think are critically important. And then I think generally, as a state, I hope we start to think a little bit more about innovation and making services easier for citizens and taxpayers to access using technology. Because I think we can deliver more for less money. I've done that as a business person, seen that happen and implemented those projects, and I think we can do that for the state.
So you have two young sons.
Yes.
Very exciting, very nice. Will they be going to Manchester schools?
Yeah, of course. I got, so my younger son is actually at the Jewish Community Federation preschool right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is where my older son went.
Mm-hmm.
But Graham is at Webster, and
Fine school.
Great, fantastic school.
Both my kids were there many, many years ago.
Well,
did very well.
We love Webster, and I thought one of the great things I think about Manchester is the diversity that it has.
That's a real asset. I think that's an underappreciated asset.
Yeah, I love it, and there's, when you look at Graham's class, it looks a lot different than my class in growing up in Canterbury, and I think that's great, because I think he's going to experience meet people, and he's going to teach him about different parts of the world, and I think that's it's important for him to have those experiences. But also, it's important that he have a great education, and I think that Webster does a good job, and I think there's lots of issues that the city can work on to improve education.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to be part of it, right? And that's the most important lesson I got from my dad, which is if you want to see the community do better, you got to get involved and try and make it happen.
Yeah. So I think we're about up to our next break. It'll be our final break on this show, and having a wonderful conversation with Gray Chenoweth, who's joined me. I guess Lou's not going to make it tonight. I don't know why. I thought he was going to be on board, but that's okay. We'll get him back next time. And we are going to talk some more about what drove him into the political arena after an incredible career with a high-tech industry.
Well, and hopefully I still have a credible career left. Hopefully I still have more career left. This is not the song.
Chris Pappas certainly had two full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Being a, owner-manager up at the Puritan, one of our most successful businesses in the city. So you can do it.
Yes.
And, if you're young and vigorous, which you seem to be, I think you can do it. So we'll be back to talk more about that. And again, I hope somebody would like to call in and participate. We've got an outstanding guest here, and if you want to have a question or comment, it's 640-3091, and we'd love to hear from you. We'll be right back. Well, hello, everybody. This is the progress report for May 2, first Wednesday in May, which usually means Lou D'Alessandro sitting next to me. But he's not here tonight. I'm not quite sure why, but I'm sure he has a good reason. By the way, Lou has a book coming out. Well, I guess it's out. He's having a book signing event very soon up at the Common Man in Concord. I'm sure if he was here, he'd want to talk about that, and unfortunately, I can't tell the exact date. But I'm sure, given his incredible career in politics, and, one time he was a Republican, He was a Republican when he was an executive counselor a long time ago. And he certainly is not that anymore. Now he's a very, very influential state senator. And I don't know what took him away tonight, but we'll get him back the first Wednesday in June for sure.
Hopefully I didn't scare him off.
Hopefully he didn't scare him off. I'm sure that's not the case. And we are having a fine conversation with an outstanding candidate for public office for the very first time. This is the very first public office you ever run for, right?
Well, I think I might have been in student government in high school, but nothing since then.
But a person who's made an outstanding contribution to the life of Manchester, including the economic life. Gray Chenoweth, he's had many important positions in our major high-tech industries, Dyne, now Oracle, and Silvertech. And now with Army, the Advanced Regenerative Medicine Institute, and everyone, I think he's had his achievements met and moved on, and it's very exciting what he's up to, and I frankly think we should be pleased that he's at this point willing to not just stick on the corporate side, but to move to the government side and seek public office as our executive counselor. We have a fine executive counselor who has served us well. That's Chris Pappas. Distinguished business career himself, of course, as the fourth generation to own our most popular restaurant in the city. We have many fine restaurants. Puritan is still it for volume of traffic year in and year out, and Chris has been part of that. And in any event, Gray has come to us and has offered himself up, which is I think quite a. By the way, is your wife totally on board with this?
She was. I mean, I think she knows how passionately I care about service. When I first showed up in 2004, whether it was NYPN or I was on the board of Families in Transition for a while, for 2 terms, and I was on the board of City Year for a couple of years. And all those things, I think, for me, different types of service. And I think she knew that, at some point I might feel like service in this way was a good idea. And so she's very supportive. And I'll tell you, I'm going out to a lot of events. I'm spending a lot of nights, more nights away from my boys than I'd like.
And from probably
her.
Tonight's one of them.
Tonight's one of them. But I do think that, she also believes that, that a community is well run when community members get involved.
Yeah.
And so she's very supportive of that. And I thank her for that, and really appreciate the fact that she's allowing me to do this.
Well, we thank you too, Tara, if you're watching the show.
Yeah, thanks,
we
sweetie.
really thank you. It's really great, and that's a very important thing to have that family support. It certainly is. I've told this story, but I heard it from you originally. I'd like you to tell it again. What was an example of the importance of moving forward with commuter rail to get this city not to be the last major urban area in the country without any passenger rail service whatsoever? I just think that's astounding. Would you like to tell us that story? I mean, it had to do with you being down in Cambridge, as I recall.
Yeah, there's actually down in the Seaport District, and there's really 2 stories I'll tell about commuter rail, but that one's the first one. And so, I'd always been Dine was growing like a weed, and we needed to find new people, and so we were looking everywhere to recruit. And so we went down to Boston to this event that was kind of like a boot camp for people that were looking to work in startups. So we went there, and I was very excited to be invited. We sponsored it, went down, and I talked to the group. It was probably around 40, 50 people. And I got to the end talking about the company. I said a lot of nodding, people excited about it. People have been asking for my business card, and we get to the end, and I said, "Hey, I got a question. How many people here? So we're actually located in Manchester, New Hampshire. I know a lot of you live down here. How many would commute up to Manchester?" And I had 2 or 3 hands, which out of 50 was depressing because I'd just come down and spent this hour trying to get these people excited about coming to Manchester to work at Dine. And then I don't know why I did this, but I just thought about it. Maybe it was rail, because my wife's dad commuted in from New Canaan into the city to do his job down in New York, and I'd been down there recently before that trip. And so then I say, well, what if we had commuter rail, and you could get in a train, you can get on North Station and come up, and 2/3 of the audience raised their hand.
I think that's very telling.
And I think for me it was just indicative of the way that people choose to travel, right? Everyone loves their car. I love my car, but I think that increasingly millennials they like to travel using
where they can still do things.
They don't have
to just watch the road and drive. They can do things.
They can do things. They got a lot of student loans, and so it's harder for them to afford a car, or it's very expensive to have a car if they want to live in the city. And so the ability to get that up there. So that's one example of just this overwhelming desire by millennials to have that as a transportation option, right? And then the second one is recently down in the Mill Yard. We're trying to recruit businesses to Manchester all the time, and I was talking to one, and I got an email, completely unsolicited, that that said I should pull it up on my phone actually, but said basically, Gray, we just saw this video on YouTube. Is it really true that you guys are thinking about putting commuter rail in? Because if that's true, we want to talk to those people that are thinking about doing it, because it is a great idea. It would allow us to recruit out of Cambridge for a business that we're going to locate in the Mill Yard, and that would just be a huge opportunity, because the thing we're most concerned about in moving to Manchester from Cambridge is that we won't have access to the right people. And it was just one more example.
Very telling one, yeah.
One more example of the business community's clear, unified voice that a multimodal transportation system that includes commuter rail is going to be a critical economic development opportunity.
Yeah.
Because what happens, so I have a lot of meetings down in Boston. What happens when you try to go there these days is that and anyone who tries to commute knows this too, which is that you drive down and it takes you, if it's 45 miles to Boston, it takes you 30 minutes to go the first 35. And then it takes 2 hours to go the last 10.
Certainly does at times.
And what that means is that if you're trying to do business down there, you're trying to meet a customer, get a business deal done, when you go down there, most of the business people that I know don't schedule a meeting before 10, and they don't schedule a meeting after 2, because they don't want to have to leave at 5 a.m. They want to leave at a reasonable time.
All right.
And they want to have dinner with their kids.
Yeah.
Right? So what that means is that your business day in Boston, because we could have 100 lanes down to the Massachusetts border. Doesn't matter how many lanes we have to there.
Because they just fill them up with cars.
Well, not only that, but it's not about filling them up with cars there. What happens is it goes down to 2 when you get past 95.
Yeah.
And so we can't control the Massachusetts, what they're doing. And so what it means is that you still don't have access. So we need to think about some strategies that, because there's a steel curtain every day that comes down at 7:30, right, south of 95, and then goes up at around 10, and then comes right back down again at 2:30.
Okay.
And we've got to have a solution for that, so we can make sure that one of the great things about the New Hampshire's economy is that we're so connected with one of the best economies in the world down in Boston.
Yeah.
And we've got all these advantages. We've got tax advantages. We want more great people, but we have great people. Right? So
the occupancy cost, the housing costs are much less here. I mean,
they'll
they'll probably be going up, but they've got a long way to go before they're up at the rates you get for a similar house in Cambridge or Boston.
Absolutely. So we've got a lot of advantages, and the better connected we are with that economy, I think the better we'll do as an economy. And that's why I think that, and it also, there's some people that they're thinking about doing private development approval.
Yeah.
And that's great. I'd love to see that. We should take that $4 million that the feds are just trying to give us.
Yeah.
And figure out what the engineering work is that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you as an entrepreneur that, I like things to be de-risked. I wouldn't want to get in, if I'm a private person that's running rail, I don't know if I'm going to sign on the dotted line if I don't know how much it's going to cost to build that bridge.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. So we should be getting this type of information and putting it in the hands of either the public sector or the private sector. But what we really need to do is get more connected to the Boston economy, the same way that 93 has been, hugely important for the state's economy.
It certainly has.
Same way, I think it's the biggest economic opportunity since the airport, which has been great and would only be.
Which is called the Manchester-Boston Regional Airport.
And think about what would happen. So I was very frustrated because down in Rhode Island, you can get I think for $99, I think you can fly to Ireland, right? That's a great deal. And for $99, I can probably fly back, right? The Irish can come here. But the reason they're going to Providence instead of Manchester is because they have a rail connection.
Yeah.
And so,
Europeans expect that because that's what you get at every European airport.
We need to have that as an option for people, and it would be a great economic development opportunity. Mm-hmm. And if there's private people interested, then we got to do everything we can to make that a success for that company.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that, and I think it's an important thing for the state to focus on.
Wonderful. So we should talk a little bit about your campaign.
Sure.
What are you doing? How's it
going?
People want to help. What do they do? All that sort of thing.
So you can go if you're interested. You can go to graychynoweth.com. That's GRAYCHYNOWETH. That's a mouthful. So it's graychynoweth.com, and you can sign up. So you can leave your name. You can ask a question. You can see where I stand on the issues. You can see how I'd try to help the state make better decisions. But most importantly, I'm interested in hearing about people's concerns.
And you've been out listening, and what are you hearing?
Well, I've been out listening. I was at 3 dumps this past weekend.
Transfer stations.
Transfer stations, that's right. My dad campaigned at the dump. I'm going to campaign at transfer stations. But I was in Lee, and I was in Deerfield, and I was in Nottingham. Uh-huh. And, I think the issues that people care about are some of the ones that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think everyone knows that opioids is an issue that we need to focus on.
Yeah, that's so alarming, and I don't see why we're going to get a better handle on it, but we got a ways to go.
We got a ways to go. And, And I think, for me, the executive council doesn't vote on everything. So there's a lot of issues that you can't make an impact on there. But I think people are very excited about when I talk about, making government easier to interact with using technology. I think people are very excited about, the idea that, I think the business community that I talked to is very supportive of commuter rail. So I think some of the issues that I'm talking about, people care about. But it runs the gamut. People also care about roads. Just in what the
Right.
the state highway plan and what they're doing for roads in their town. Down in Londonderry with some of the developments that they're going, is the transportation infrastructure going to be there to make sure that those are successful
Yep.
on all those
Yep.
all those state projects. So, I think transportation people care about. I think people care about opioids. I think people care about education and the tax environment and that kind of stuff. But obviously the executive council doesn't do much on that. All we can do to help out on that front is make sure that we use smart judgment to drive good bargains so that we don't waste taxpayer money. And I feel like I've got a pretty good shot at that because I've been negotiating deals for businesses for a long time, and
Apparently very successfully, too.
and I'm excited to try and do some of that in Concord.
Well, this has been wonderful, Gray. I've really enjoyed having this chance to talk with you, and again, and now that you're in the political arena, which is new for you, but I think you're an outstanding candidate, and you have an awful lot. You've delivered a lot of value to the state and the city already, and I think you've got a lot more to contribute. So we are very, very pleased that you're out there on the hustings, and we'll see what happens. I'm excited for you, and I hope people will want to reach out to you and help out. And so
Well,
thank you for being part of this.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for all of your work in the community.
We could have covered a lot more. I mean, I don't think we've covered
No,
many
we
of
could,
the things you've
I'll
done.
come on
but
again. Can you let me on
We'll
again? We'll
let
talk
you
about
on
more.
again. We could do more because I think we have not covered all your community involvement, but we could save that for another time because there's a lot more there. And we thank you for what you're doing and wish you the best.
All right, great.
And
Thanks,
we'll
Bob.
be back next week with another edition of the Progress Report with Mike Farley. And so tune in that time and we'll see what we can do to make you worthwhile to watch. Take care, everybody.